The Promise, the Miracle Under the Tree, a story of 3 generations. What if a promise made by an 8-year-old girl on the verge of death could span decades, connect 3 generations, and prove that some miracles don't happen all at once, but unfold slowly, year after year, until they become the most important story in an entire family's history? New York, December 1966. A Canadian grandmother and her granddaughter, who is too thin, too pale, and whose eyes are too large for her frail face, get off the Greyhound bus at Port Authority. The girl has leukemia. The doctors gave him 6 months. But Grandma doesn't accept endings written by others, so she does the only thing that makes sense. She takes her granddaughter to see the Christmas tree at Rockefeller Center. Not just any tree, but the tree hailing from their region in Canada, traveling miles to shine in the heart of Manhattan. Beneath that gigantic tree, illuminated by thousands of lights, the girl makes a promise. "Grandma, if I survive, will we come back here every year?" And the grandmother, with tears in her eyes, replies, "Every year, my love, I promise." But promises made under Christmas trees have a strange power. They don't go out when the lights go out. They don't disappear when the snow melts. They grow like invisible roots, nourishing lives, enduring pain, surviving everything, until they become a legacy. This is the story of 3 women: the grandmother who believed against all logic, the granddaughter who fought against death and won, and the great-granddaughter who, decades later, discovers that carrying old promises is what makes us human. Are you ready for a story that doesn't end? It just multiplies. So take a deep breath, because The Promise Under the Tree begins now. Margaret Maggie O'Connor is 68 years old, with calloused hands from decades working on the farm and a heart that has never learned to give up. She lost her husband in the war, raised 5 children alone, survived brutal winters in the mountains of Quebec. But she had never faced anything that frightened her as much as the doctor's eyes when he said, "Mrs. O'Connor, your granddaughter has acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Without treatment, perhaps 6 months." Emily, the granddaughter, is 8 years old. Brown hair that's already starting to fall out, translucent skin where veins appear like blue maps, energy that comes and goes in unpredictable waves. She doesn't fully understand what's happening. She only knows that she gets tired quickly, that she gets hurt easily, that adults look at her with that poor thing look, but never tell the truth. Emily's mother, Sarah, is crying a lot. The father works double shifts trying to pay for medical appointments that are beyond their budget, but Maggie, the grandmother, doesn't cry. Maggie age. She heard it on the radio. For the first time in history, the Rockefeller Center Christmas Tree will be Canadian. It traveled from her region, the forests of Quebec, to New York, as a symbol of friendship between nations. And Maggie had a crazy, impossible, desperate idea. "I'm going to take Emily to see the tree, our tree." Sarah protested. "Mom, she's too sick to travel." "That's exactly why you need to go. If it's going to be a short time, let it be a time full of magic." And so, on the frigid morning of December 7th, 1966, Maggie and Emily boarded the Greyhound bus bound for New York. The girl is wearing an overly thick coat, a pink woolen hat, and in her eyes, for the first time in weeks, a glint of expectation. The trip takes 6 hours. Emily sleeps most of the time, her head on her grandmother's shoulder, breathing softly. Maggie looks out the window, watching the landscape change from forest to city, from silence to crowd, from home to the unknown. And he prays, not to the God of churches, but to the God of trees, of small miracles, of promises that no one can guarantee, but that are worth making nonetheless. When they arrive in Manhattan, Emily wakes up, look out the window and see buildings so tall they seem to pierce the sky, lights everywhere, people rushing as if they were late for something important. Grandma, is this where the tree is? Yes, my love. And she came from home. She came to meet us. Emily smiles, that fragile yet genuine smile. And together, grandmother and granddaughter walk through the icy streets of New York towards Rockefeller Center, towards the tree that will change everything, the promise that would change everything. The air in New York in early December is sharp, heavy with haste and promises. Maggie holds Emily's hand tightly as they walk down Fifth Avenue, past decorated shop windows, chestnut vendors and street musicians playing off-key but heartfelt Christmas carols. Emily looks at everything with wide eyes, not like a spoiled child seeing luxury, but like someone who knows that every second matters, that every image needs to be preserved because there might not be many laters. Grandma, there are so many people. It's New York, my love. The whole world passes through here, and the tree, right over there, just a little further. Emily squeezes her grandmother's hand with a force she shouldn't have, considering her frail body. But there's something about her, a quiet determination, a refusal to give up, that reminds Maggie of herself when she was young, and the world said no, but she insisted yes. They turned the corner of 50th Street, and then, like a divine revelation, it appears. The tree. Not just any tree, but a gigantic Norway spruce, over 20 meters tall, covered in thousands of colorful lights that shine like domesticated stars. Immense ornaments hanging from thick branches, a colossal star at the top gleaming against the gray December sky. Emily stops. Open mouth, tears immediately welled up in my eyes. Grandma, is that her? Yes, my love. It came from home, from our forests. Emily lets go of her grandmother's hand and walks slowly, mesmerized towards the base of the tree. Maggie follows her, moved, watching her granddaughter absorb every detail, the lights blinking softly, the colorful reflections in the accumulated snow around them, the people passing by but not stopping, too busy to see the miracle before them. But Emily sees. She always has. Emily approaches the base of the tree where a protective grate prevents people from directly touching the trunk. But she's small, and she squeezes between the bars, stretches out her hand, and touches the rough, cold, real bark. A security guard approaches, ready to reprimand her, but Maggie intercepts him. Please, she's sick. She just wants to touch the tree. The man, a war veteran with visible scars on his face, looks at Emily, that thin, fragile girl with the pink hat covering her already thinning head. And something inside him softens. 5 minutes, he says quietly. Just 5. Maggie's eyes shone in gratitude. Tears held back. Emily closes her eyes, her hand against the trunk, and whispers something that only the tree can hear. Maggie doesn't hear the words, but she feels their weight. It's prayer, it's supplication, it's a conversation between souls who understand fragility. A few hours later, when the sun is low and the city lights begin to compete with those of the tree, the crowd grows. It's the official opening night, December 9th, 1966. Rockefeller Center Plaza fills with families, couples, tourists, and weary New Yorkers who stop for a few minutes to remember that not everything is a rush. There's a stage set up, authorities giving speeches about friendship between nations, about tradition, about hope. But Emily doesn't pay attention to the speeches. She just stares at the tree, waiting for the moment when the lights will come on completely. Maggie hugs her from behind, protecting her from the cold and the tiredness that is beginning to show on the girl's shoulders. Are you cold? A little, but I don't want to leave. We're not going. We'll see it through to the end. And then, the moment. A man on stage is doing the countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And the tree explodes in light. Not gradually, instantly. Thousands of colored lights turn on simultaneously, transforming night into artificial day, into a cathedral of glass and electricity, a visual promise that beauty still exists, even when the world is heavy. The crowd applauds, shouts, laughs. Children point, adults take photos with old cameras, couples kiss. But Emily just stares, mouth agape, tears streaming freely. Maggie hugs her tighter, also crying, not from sadness, but from gratitude for being alive at that moment, for having managed to bring her granddaughter there, for witnessing together something greater than themselves. Grandma is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Me too, my love. Me too. On promise, after the crowd begins to disperse, Maggie and Emily remain. They sit on a nearby bench, gazing at the tree in silence, simply absorbing it. Emily is tired, the kind of tiredness that comes from illness, not exertion, but she doesn't want to leave. Grandfather, yes, my love. If I get better, can we come back here? Maggie's heart tightens. If I get better, the girl knows. Perhaps not completely, but he knows that something is wrong, that the future is not guaranteed. Maggie takes a deep breath, chooses her words carefully. Emily, you will get better. And when you do, we'll come back here. Every year, I promise. Emily looks at her grandmother, her eyes shining not only from the light of the tree, but from something deeper. Hope mixed with fear, desire mixed with doubt. Every year, no matter what happens, we will return to this tree. Emily extends her pinky finger. A real promise? A pinky promise? Maggie smiles through her tears, intertwining her finger with her granddaughter's. I really promise, pinky promise. And under the Christmas tree at Rockefeller Center on December 9th, 1966, two souls made a pact that would span decades, illnesses, deaths, and births. Because some promises are not just words. They are anchors. They are maps. They are the only thing that keeps us alive when everything else falls apart. They return to the cheap hotel in Queens, the only one Maggie could afford. Emily is exhausted. She can barely take off her coat. Maggie helps her lie down, covers her with blankets, and kisses her forehead, which is too hot. Grandfather? Try. Thank you for bringing me. Maggie is unable to answer. She simply squeezes her granddaughter's hand until she falls asleep. And there, alone in the darkness of the cheap room, Maggie cries, not from despair, but from something more complicated. Gratitude mixed with terror, love mixed with helplessness. She doesn't know if Emily will survive. He doesn't know if they will ever return. He doesn't know if the promise is a pious lie or a prophecy, but he made the promise anyway. Because sometimes all we can do is believe against all evidence and hope that the universe is listening. The promise made under the tree is not just a commitment, it's a strategy for psychological survival. Maggie is giving Emily a reason to fight, not just survive, but survive for this. And for Maggie, it's an anchor against despair. As long as there is promise, there is a future. The following morning, they return to Canada. Emily is asleep on the bus, holding a postcard of the tree. And so begins the toughest fight of their lives. Have you ever made an impossible promise just to have a reason to keep going? Have you ever clung to something small when everything else fell apart? Comment, share, and get ready for Chapter 2, The Fight, 1967-1970, where the promise is tested by pain, brutal medicine, and the temptation to give up. The Struggle, 1967-1970, when promises are tested by pain. January 1967 arrives with heavy snow and even worse news. The oncologist, Dr. Bernard, a serious man with thick glasses and weary compassion in his eyes, sits before Sarah and Maggie and delivers the verdict. The leukemia is progressing. We need to start chemotherapy immediately. But let's be realistic. The chances are 20%, maybe less. Sarah is falling apart. Maggie clenches her fists, her jaw rigid. Emily, sitting in the waiting room playing with a rag doll, doesn't hear, but she feels. Children always feel. When the remedy turns out to be poison chemotherapy in the 1960s, wasn't refined science, it was necessary brutality, poison against poison, a gamble that the body could endure more than cancer. Emily spends the first few days after treatment vomiting non-stop. She can't eat, she can't sleep. She just curls up in bed, pale as a sheet, cold sweat on her forehead. Sarah cries in the kitchen, feeling helpless. Emily's father works triple shifts, running away from pain he doesn't know how to process. But Maggie stays. She sits next to her granddaughter, holds her hand and whispers stories. Stories of the farm, the forests, the Christmas tree that traveled all the way to New York. Remember the tree, my love. Emily nods weakly. She was so big, so beautiful. And we'll be back. Remember the promise? Emily opens her eyes, filled with pain, but also with something stubborn, something that refuses to fade. Every year. But first you have to fight, you have to endure. And Emily endured it, because there was something waiting on the other side. Survival routine. The following months became a cruel routine. Monday, hospital, needles, medicine. Tuesday to Thursday, nausea, weakness, trying to eat something. Friday, blood tests, worried looks from the doctors. Weekend, small moments of normalcy, drawing, listening to the radio, sleeping cuddled up with Grandma. Emily's hair is falling out completely. She cries the first time she sees her reflection in the mirror, not out of vanity, but because she looks like an alien, because she no longer recognizes herself. Maggie buys colorful scarves and teaches how to tie them like turbans. You look beautiful, my love, like a warrior princess. I don't feel like a warrior, but it is. Every day you wake up is a victory. Spring arrives, but it brings no relief. Tests show that the cancer cells are resisting. Dr. Bernard calls the family again. We need to increase the dosage. It's going to be more difficult. Sarah sobs. She can't take it anymore. Maggie replies firmly. She endures it because she has reason to endure it. And Emily, even listening from the waiting room, clutches the Christmas tree postcard she's been carrying in her pocket since December. Temporary remission. June brings an unexpected miracle. Tests show a significant reduction in cancerous cells. Dr. Bernard, trying not to give false hope, says, that's a good sign. But it's not a cure yet. We need to keep going. But for Emily, it's light at the end of the tunnel. For the first time in months, he has the energy to leave the house, play in the yard, and run, slowly but running, after the chickens on the farm. Maggie watches from the window, tears of relief welling up in her eyes. Sarah, for the first time, smiles for real. And Emily, lying on the grass looking at the blue sky, whispers, Grandma will keep her promise. We're going back to the tree. The temptation to give up. But cancer doesn't give up easily. October brings a new relapse, more aggressive, more frightening. Emily returns to the hospital, this time staying for weeks. One night after everyone had left, she called her grandmother. Grandma, I'm tired. Maggie's heart feels a chill run cold. I know, my love. Sometimes I want to stop. Maggie takes a deep breath and chooses the most important words of her life. Emily, I can't force you to fight, but I want you to know, If you stop, I understand, and I will still love you forever, Emily Cora, but the promise still stands. Even if you're not here, I'll go every year for you. A long silence. Emily grips her grandmother's hand more tightly than she should. No, I want to be there. I want to see the tree again. Then fight a little more, just a little more. And Emily fought, not because he was strong, but because he had a promise waiting for him. The impossible return. Miraculously, in December 1967, the doctors authorized a short trip. Emily is weak, but stable. Maggie wastes no time. She buys bus tickets, packs her bags, ignores Sarah's protests, she can't stand it, and boards the bus again for New York. This time, Emily is different, thinner, paler, a colorful scarf covering her head. But the eyes shine with a determination that impresses even strangers. When they arrive at Rockefeller Center, Emily walks alone to the tree. Slower than last year, but progressing. Touch the trunk again, close your eyes, whisper, thanks. Maggie, observing from afar, notices something profound. The promise isn't just saving Emily, it's saving her too. 1968-1969, the cycle of pain and hope. The following years are a roller coaster. Moments of remission where Emily returns to school, makes friends, and almost seems normal. Moments of relapse where hospitalization, despair, and fear prevail. But every December, no matter the state, they come back. December 1968. Emily in a wheelchair but smiling under the tree. December 1969. Emily walking slowly but walking. The tree becomes a ritual, an anchor, proof that time is passing, and Emily is still alive to see it. Spring of 1970 brings the most important exam. Dr. Bernard, now with more gray hair and a genuine smile, enters the room and says the words that no one dared to expect. Complete remission, 5 years without relapse. We can consider her cured. Silence. Then, an explosion of tears, hugs, and screams. Emily, now 12 years old, her hair growing back in uneven curls, looks at Maggie and whispers, "The promise, we kept it." Maggie hugs her granddaughter, crying like she's never cried before. Tears of gratitude, relief, triumph over the impossible. December 1970 will be different. It's no longer a visit from a survivor. It's a victory celebration. But something will happen under that tree that will change everything again. But what about you, internet user? Have you ever overcome something impossible? Have you ever clung to a promise when everything told you to give up? Comment, share, and get ready for Chapter 3, The Golden Years, 1970-1985, when the promise becomes tradition and the saved girl becomes a woman who saves others. Chapter 3, The Golden Years, 1970-1985, when promise becomes tradition and legacy, December 1970. Emily, now 12 years old and officially cured, walks down Fifth Avenue beside her grandmother with a firm step, her hair growing into tousled but beautiful curls, her cheeks finally regaining color. There are no more wheelchairs. There is no longer any palpable fear with each breath. Pure joy, that rare kind of happiness that only those who have been on the brink of the abyss and returned can feel. Grandma, it's different this year. What do you mean, my love? I used to come because I needed to. Now I come because I want to. Maggie smiles and squeezes her granddaughter's hand. That's how it should be. A promise ceases to be a mere formality and becomes a choice. And under the 1970 tree, brighter than ever, they don't just look, they dance. There, in the middle of the New York crowd, grandmother and granddaughter spin around laughing, unconcerned by curious glances, celebrating not only Christmas, but the life that was almost stolen and was regained with each vomit, each needle prick, each night of terror transformed into a morning of hope. 1971-1975, when tradition expands. In subsequent years, the annual pilgrimage transforms into a family event. Sarah, Emily's mother, is finally able to reintegrate herself into the family. Before, she was working to pay off medical debts. Emily's father, a quiet man who never knew how to express love with words, also goes and cries discreetly every time he sees his daughter alive, healthy, and smiling. December 1972. Emily brings her best friend, Rachel, who is going through her parents' divorce and needs to see something beautiful. December 1973. The whole family rents a van, turning the trip into an adventure, stopping at diners along the way, singing off-key songs, transforming old pain into golden memories. December 1974. Emily, now a 16-year-old teenager, takes her first boyfriend, a shy boy who holds her hand under the tree and promises never to leave her. December 1975. Maggie turns 77. She is slower, more tired, but still leads the annual expedition with unwavering determination. The ritual deepens. More than a tree, it's a sanctuary. Over time, the ritual gains layers. They always arrive on the same day, December 9th, the anniversary of their first visit. They stay at the same cheap hotel in Queens. Even when Emily offers to pay for a better hotel, Maggie refuses. Tradition is tradition. They buy hot chocolate from the same street cart. They sit on the same bench when available. And always, Emily touches the tree trunk and whispers, "Thank you." Others notice. A photographer from the New York Times in December 1974 sees the scene. Elderly grandmother and teenage granddaughter, hands intertwined under the giant tree, and takes a photo that becomes the cover of the local section. The title, "Traditions That Save." Grandmother and granddaughter celebrate 8th consecutive year under the Rockefeller tree. Emily keeps the newspaper as a treasure. 1978. Emily goes to college, and the promise is tested. Emily receives a scholarship to study nursing at the University of Toronto. It's a dream come true. She wants to take care of sick children, to give back what she has experienced. But December arrives, and the final exams coincide exactly with the annual trip. She calls Maggie, her voice distressed. "Grandma, I won't be able to go this year." Silence on the other end. "Grandfather, then I'll go alone." Emily's heart tightens. "No, you can't travel alone. You're 80 years old. And you have proof. It's going well, my love. The tree isn't going anywhere. But the promise is that you will live. And living sometimes means choosing what is important right now." "I understand." Emily cries on the phone, feeling like she's failing. But Maggie, with decades of wisdom, says, "My love, a promise isn't a prison. It's a reminder that we are bigger than our circumstances. You go every year you can, and I go every year I can, and that's enough." Emily takes the tests and does well. But in January, as soon as the holidays begin, she takes a bus to New York alone, finds the tree still up. It usually stays up until the beginning of January, and spends an hour there, crying and laughing at the same time. Maggie suffered a mild stroke in October 1980. He spent weeks in the hospital, his right side partially paralyzed. Doctors say she shouldn't travel. Sarah begs to cancel the trip, but Maggie, stubborn as always, refuses. "I made a promise. I will keep it, even if it's the last thing I do." Emily, now a registered nurse working in a children's hospital, takes leave, returns home, and accompanies her grandmother in person. The journey is slow and difficult. Maggie needs a walker, so she stops several times to rest. But that's enough. And when she sees the tree, something miraculous happens. She drops the walker, walks alone, staggering but alone to the base, touches the trunk and whispers, "Thank you for another year." Emily, seeing this, understands. The promise isn't just saving Emily. It's keeping Maggie alive, and it includes the tree in the wedding. Emily marries David, a pediatrician she met at the hospital. The ceremony is simple, taking place at the local church in Canada. But the marriage proposal took place under the Rockefeller tree in December 1981. And at the party, Emily makes an emotional toast. "This tree saved me. It gave me a reason to fight when I had no strength. And now it has witnessed the beginning of the next phase of my life. Thank you, Grandma Maggie, for teaching me that promises matter." Maggie, now 84 years old, cries quietly. 1985, Sophie is born, and the promise gains a third generation. In March 1985, Emily gave birth to Sophie. Healthy girl, blonde hair, curious eyes. Maggie, now a great-grandmother, holds the baby with trembling but firm hands and whispers, "Welcome, little one. You have a promise waiting for you." December 1985 is special. Maggie, Emily, and Sophie, just 9 months old, go to Rockefeller Center together. 3 generations, 3 women under the same tree. Emily holds Sophie in her lap and points to the lights. "See, my love, this tree is magic. It saved Mom, and one day you'll understand." Sophie, of course, understands nothing. She just babbles and tries to grab the lights. But Maggie and Emily know the promise is now bigger than them. It's a legacy. The promise, which began as a survival strategy, became a family identity. Each annual return is not just a visit. It's a reaffirmation that the O'Connor family doesn't give up, doesn't forget, doesn't let the past die, but transforms it into present strength. But 1986 will bring the ultimate test. Maggie, now 87 years old, feels that this may be her last December, and he makes an impossible request of Emily. Do you have traditions that anchor you? Promises that span generations? Comment, share, and get ready for Chapter 4, The Farewell, 1986-1990, where Maggie passes the torch and Emily learns that legacies never die. October 1986. Maggie is sitting on the farm's porch, blanket over her legs, watching the trees change color, gold, red, orange. Emily visits with Sophie, now a year and a half old, wobbling across the lawn with that clumsy gait of children who have just learned to walk. Maggie watches, a gentle smile on her face, but there's something different in her eyes, a calmness that Emily recognizes, the calmness of someone preparing to leave. "Grandfather?" Maggie turns her head slowly. "Yes, my love. Are you well?" Maggie takes a deep breath, chooses her words carefully. "I'm tired, Emily, very tired. Do you want me to call the doctor?" "No, it's not that kind of tiredness. It's the tiredness of someone who has lived long enough." Emily's heart tightens. She sits next to her grandmother, holding her hand, now so fragile, skin as thin as paper, blue veins mapping decades of work, love, and struggle. "Don't talk like that. My love, I'm 87 years old. I raised 5 children, saw you almost die and be resurrected, met my great-granddaughter. I did everything I needed to do. But there's still December. The tree." Maggie smiles, tears in her eyes. "That's why I need to talk to you." Maggie pulls Emily closer, her voice low but firm. "Emily, I don't know if I'll be able to go this year." "Then we won't go. We'll wait for you to get better." "No, you're going, you and Sophie. But listen, the promise wasn't just about you and me. It was about something bigger. It was about never giving up, never forgetting that miracles exist. And now, you need to pass that on to Sophie. Emily, Cora, Grandma, I can't do this without you. Yes, you can, because I taught you. And you will teach Sophie, and Sophie will teach her daughter. The promise doesn't die when I die. Maggie pulls the original postcard of the tree from 1966 out of her pocket, already yellowed, edges worn, but still intact. Keep this, and when Sophie grows up, give it to her and tell her the whole story. Emily holds the card with trembling hands, feeling the weight of decades in that piece of paper. I promise, Grandma, I promise I will continue. December 1986. Maggie's last journey. Against all medical expectations, Maggie insists on going. It's too weak for the bus, so Emily and David rent an adapted van and turn the back seat into an improvised bed. The trip takes 2 days, with frequent stops. Maggie sleeps most of the time, waking only to smile at Sophie, who doesn't understand anything, but senses that something important is happening. When they arrive in Manhattan, Maggie wakes up more alert. Are we there yet? We're here, Grandma. Emily pushes the wheelchair down Fifth Avenue, Sophie in David's lap beside her. And when they turned the corner and the tree appeared, gigantic, shining, eternal, Maggie cried, "Help me get up." "Grandma, you didn't." "It helps me." Emily and David help her. Maggie stands upright, leaning on them, trembling but steady. He walks the last few meters to the base of the tree, touched the tree trunk with a trembling hand, and he whispers, his voice hoarse, "Thank you for everything, for each year, for Emily, for Sophie. Thank you." And then, look at Emily. "Now it's your turn. Promise you'll continue?" Emily, crying, replies, "I promise, every year, me and Sophie, and whoever else comes after." Maggie smiles, that smile of absolute peace. So it's done. My part is finished. January 1987. Maggie passes in peace. Maggie died on January 12, 1987, sleeping in her own bed on the farm, surrounded by her family. There is no pain, no struggle, just a gentle departure, like someone who has fulfilled their mission and can finally rest. The funeral is simple, held at the local church. Emily, holding Sophie in her lap, talks about her grandmother. "She taught me that promises matter, that hope is not naivete, but a choice, and that true love doesn't end, it becomes a legacy." They bury Maggie in the farm cemetery, under an ancient oak tree, and Emily plants a fir sapling next to the grave, a symbol of the tree that saved everything. December arrives, and Emily feels the weight of the absence. Part of her wants to cancel, feeling that without Maggie, it doesn't make sense. But then he looks at Sophie, now 2.5 years old, and remembers the promise. "Sophie, we're going on a special trip." "Where to, Mom?" "To see the magic tree that saved Mom." And they go. Emily, David as Sophie. The journey is different, quieter, more melancholic. But when they arrive and Sophie sees the tree for the first time, with enough awareness to marvel, something inside Emily heals. "Mom, it's so big." "Yes, my love. And do you know why? Because it has magic inside it." "In truth?" "Really. And one day I'll tell you the whole story." 1988, 1990. Rebuilding tradition. The following years are a process of rebuilding tradition without the matriarch. Emily misses Maggie at every corner of New York, at every bench where they used to sit, with every hot chocolate they bought. But Sophie brings new life to the ritual. She asks questions, runs around the tree, and asks to take a picture like a princess. And Emily realizes the tradition didn't die with Maggie, it just changed form. December 1989, Emily brings an old photo album and shows it to Sophie. "Do you see this lady?" That's your great-grandmother Maggie. She's the one who started it all. Sophie, 4 years old, touches the photo with childlike reverence. Was she good? The best. And she loved you very much, even without knowing you well. Is she in heaven? Yes. But I think she comes to see us here every December. Sophie looks at the tree, then at the sky, and waves. Hi, Grandma Maggie. Emily cries and laughs at the same time. December 1990. Sophie makes her first promise. At 5 years old, Sophie already understands more. Emily tells the complete story, adapted for her age, about how her great-grandmother took her mother to see the tree when she was very ill, and how that saved everything. Sophie listens, her eyes wide. And you come every year? Every year? Forever? Forever, Sophie thinks. Seriously. Then take your mother's hand. I promise to. I'll come every year, even when I grow up. Emily feels the circle closing in. The promise now belongs to the third generation. Maggie's death could have ended everything, but Emily chose differently. She transformed grief into continuity, absence into presence through action. Legacy isn't about the person, it's about what the person taught. Cliffhanger ECTA 2015 will come. Sophie, now an adult, will have a daughter of her own. And the promise, 50 years later, will be tested again. Do you carry the legacies of those who have passed away? Did he transform pain into tradition? Chapter 5. The present, 2015-2016, when 3 generations meet 50 years later, December 2015. Sophie O'Connor Martinez, now 30, a pediatric nurse like her mother, drives through the streets of Manhattan with a firm grip on the wheel, but a heavy heart. In the back seat, his daughter Lily, just 4 years old, sings a song from Frozen off-key. In the passenger seat, Emily, now 57 years old, with gray hair but still bright eyes, holds the yellowed postcard from 1966. This year is special. 50 years since the first promise. 50 years since Maggie first took Emily. And for the first time, 3 generations of O'Connor women will be together, conscious, under the tree. Something Maggie never fully experienced, as Sophie was a baby when she left. They park near Rockefeller Center, more difficult now, with mass tourism and heightened security after 9/11. But they manage. Lily jumps out of the car, eyes wide. "Mom, is this it?" "Yes, my love, it's here." Emily descends slowly, feeling the weight of the years, but also the lightness of gratitude. 50 years. Half a century since he should have died at the age of 8. And here she is, alive and well, watching her granddaughter and great-granddaughter continue what Maggie started. Sophie holds Lily's hand. "Do you remember the story Mom told you? From Grandma Emily and Grandma Maggie?" "That's right. Today you'll see where it all began." The 2015 tree is colossal, 24 meters tall, covered in more than 50,000 LED lights, a technology Maggie never imagined. With a 250-kilogram Swarovski star on top, sparkling like a diamond. Lily stopped, speechless. Wow. Sophie and Emily exchange glances. It's exactly the reaction they had decades ago. Magic never gets old. They walk to the base where there are now stricter security barriers. But Emily, with the authority of someone who has done this 50 times, finds the perfect angle. "Lily, come here." Lily approaches, curious. Emily kneels beside her and points to the tree. "Do you know why this tree is special? Why is it so big? Not only that, because she saved my life." Lily frowns head, confused. How does a tree save someone? Emily smiles, tears already beginning to well up. "When I was your age, I was very, very sick. The doctors said I was going to die. But my grandma Maggie brought me here, and we made a promise. If I survived, we would come back every year. And you survived. Yes. Because there was a reason. Because there was a promise waiting. Sophie joins them, embracing them both. And now, you are the new generation of promise. Lily, with the seriousness of a 4-year-old, asks, "Do I need to make a promise too?" Emily and Sophie exchange glances, tears streaming freely. Emily replies, "Only if you want to, my love, but a promise isn't an obligation. It's a choice." Lily thinks, looks at the tree, then back at her great-grandmother and mother. I want to come every year, with you all." And there, under the 2015 tree, Lily extends her little finger. Sophie links the piece. Emily ties hers. 3 generations, 3 women, 3 intertwined promises. A freelance photographer covering the Christmas season sees the scene. 3 women from different generations, hands intertwined, crying and laughing at the same time under the giant tree. He asks for permission, takes a picture, and asks the story. Emily tells the story, briefly, but she tells it. The photographer, visibly moved, says, "Can I publish this? It's too beautiful not to be shared." Emily hesitates, but Sophie says yes. Maybe it will inspire someone. The photo was published in the New York Times on December 24, 2015, with the title, "50 Years, 3 Generations, 1 Promise, the Rockefeller Tree That Saves Lives." The story goes viral. Millions of shares, thousands of comments. I'm crying at work. My grandmother saved me that way too. I'm going to start my own tradition. Emily, Sophie, and Lily are invited to interviews, talk shows, and even short documentaries, but they retain their essence. It's not about fame, it's about remembering that promises matter. December 2016, the 51st year and the final surprise. When they return in December 2016, something unexpected happens. Hundreds of people are waiting at the base of the tree, holding signs. "Thank you for inspiring us. I made my promise today. 50 years of hope." Emily, Sophie, and Lily are speechless. A woman approaches, holding the hand of her young daughter, who has a scarf on her head, clearly undergoing chemotherapy. "Mrs. Emily, I read your story. My daughter has leukemia, and today I brought her here to make the same promise. Thank you for showing us that it's possible." Emily hugs the woman, both of them crying. "It will work out. Believe me and come back every year. The tree is waiting." The final revelation. Maggie was always there. At night, when the crowd disperses, Emily, Sophie, and Lily are left alone under the tree. Emily pulls the 1966 postcard from her pocket, still intact, miraculously preserved for 5 decades. "Sophie, Lily, I want you to know, Maggie isn't just in our memories. She's here, in every light, in every promise we make, in every person we inspire. Legacies don't die. They just change form." Sophie holds her mother's hand. Lily holds her mother's hand. Emily gazes at the starry sky above the tree, and he whispers, "Thank you, Grandma Maggie, for everything, for teaching me that miracles exist, for giving me a reason to fight, for starting something that will never end." And that night under the tree in 2016, the 3 of them feel, impossible to explain, but they feel, Maggie's presence, as if she were there, smiling, saying, "You did well. Keep going. Always." The promise, which began as a survival strategy for an 8-year-old girl, has become an intergenerational legacy that transcends death, time, and space. Maggie has been dead for 30 years, but more alive than ever, because she lives on in the actions, choices, and promises of those she touched. This is true immortality, not living forever, but creating something that lives on through others. 2066 will arrive. Lily will have a daughter of her own, and the promise 100 years later will continue. Because some things never end, they just multiply. When promises become immortality, 50 years, half a century since a desperate grandmother took her dying granddaughter to see a Christmas tree. 50 years have passed since an impossible promise was made under lights that should have meant nothing, but meant everything. And now, in 2016, that promise no longer belongs to Maggie and Emily. It belongs to the world. What the tree really saved. The tree did not cure Emily's leukemia. Medicine did it. Brutal chemotherapy, dedicated doctors, biological luck. But the tree saved something that no medicine can cure: the will to fight. Emily didn't survive because she was strong. She survived because she had a reason to be strong. Because every time the body screamed, "Give up," the mind whispered, "But the tree is waiting." Because Maggie, with the wisdom of someone who has seen a lot, understood that humans don't survive on oxygen and food alone. They survive on meaning, and the promise became the meaning of Emily. Maggie died in 1987, but in 2016, she was more alive than many people who are still breathing. Because legacy isn't about duration, it's about depth. She left behind no fortune, no empire, no name on buildings. She left behind something even more powerful. She taught a granddaughter to never give up. And that granddaughter taught a daughter, and that daughter taught a daughter. And the echo of that lesson will continue to resonate for generations Maggie will never know. This is true immortality. Not to live forever, but to plant trees whose shade will protect people we will never see. We live in a world where despair is easy, where giving up is understandable, where cynicism is seen as wisdom. But the O'Connor family story reminds us, promises are weapons against death, against pain, against the temptation to believe that nothing matters. When Emily was in the hospital vomiting after chemotherapy, feeling like she couldn't take another day, the promise was the only thing keeping her alive. Not religious faith, although she had it. Not abstract hope, although I had that too, but something concrete. I promised I would return, so I need to survive to keep that promise. And it worked. When Emily's story went viral in 2015, something unexpected happened. Thousands of families started their own traditions, parents taking sick children to special places and making promises to return. Grandparents creating annual rituals with their grandchildren, anchoring love in repeated action. Solitary individuals creating traditions on their own, proving to themselves that it's worth continuing. A man from Seattle wrote to Emily, "I read your story when I was planning suicide. I decided to make a promise to my 5-year-old nephew. Every year, on his birthday, I would take him to see a baseball game. That promise saved me. Thank you," Emily cried while reading. Because she understood. Maggie didn't just save herself, it saved everyone whose story Emily touched. What will happen in 2066? The 4th generation Lily will be 54 years old in 2066. Emily, if she lives, will be 108. Sophie, 81. And Lily will take her own daughter, not yet born, not yet imagined, to see the Rockefeller Center Christmas Tree. And he will tell the story, from Maggie, who never gave up, from Emily, who fought against the impossible and won, from Sophie, who transformed grief into a legacy, and of itself, guardian of the promise that spans an entire century, 100 years, 4 generations, a promise. And the tree, replaced each year but always the same in essence, will continue to shine, a silent witness that miracles don't happen all at once, but unfold slowly year after year, promise after promise. So the question that remains for you is, what is your tree? What promise will you make today that could save not only yourself, but someone you love? It doesn't have to be grand. It doesn't have to be perfect. It can be as simple as, every year on this day, I will do this with you. But do it and fulfill it. Because promises have a strange, magical, almost divine power. They transform an abstract future into a concrete commitment. They transform despair into hope. They transform survival into a life worth living. Comment below. What promise will you make today? With whom? Why? Share this story with someone who needs a reason to keep going. Subscribe to the channel for more stories that don't lie, that don't oversimplify, but that show that hope is a choice, and choice changes everything. And always remember, some promises aren't just words, they're anchors that keep us alive when everything else wants to drown us. Make yours, and never, ever give up on it.